Developers of old MMOs have a serious problem, and it's probably not something you've thought about before. Hi, I am Bloody Drongo, and I'm an avid fan of MMOs, having played many different ones over the past 20 years, including RuneScape, MapleStory, Wurm Online, Albion Online, Black Desert Online, New World, and many more. Some of these are modern titles. Some of them are older, but in this video I'm going to propose that all of them are currently going to have to or have already contended with a common issue, an issue that MMOs are specifically vulnerable to. And this is a problem that I call individualized product potential, which is a phenomenon which I believe is in no small part to blame for the common culture of bitter and nostalgic veterans that old MMO communities are somewhat renowned for. Now, for as much as I'm an avid MMO enjoyer, I'm also a complete layman when it comes to game design and analysis. So it's entirely possible that this is a theory that actually has a formal name and is well documented. However, if that is the case, I've not been able to find it. So, indulging my ignorance, we are going to make this video anyway, and I'll let you be the judge of whether my perspective on this phenomenon is valid or not. So, what is individualized product potential, and why does it affect MMOs specifically to such a great extent, and why does it get so much worse as a game ages? To answer this, I think we first need to look at some of the unique characteristics that make MMOs special. Firstly, MMOs are games that focus on providing a longer-term playing experience, one that ideally will last for years and years at a time. Secondly, they often incorporate many different gameplay loops and aspects to appeal to lots of player types, such as combat, crafting, social, collectibles, questing, customization, and many more. Finally, they also have a unique ability for players to become invested that is beyond just standard games. Either the ability to spend real cash or spend exorbitant amounts of time, both of which directly impact a player's social standing within the game, with this community status becoming yet another form of investment. These factors together create player bases that are extremely invested, but are also motivated by very different factors, whether they be PvP, PvE, a collection log, their community or guild, or simply trying to have the nicest house and collectibles. Which is where individualized product potential phenomenon comes into play. Each of these players have their own perspective of what makes a game valuable to them and worth playing. Why is that important? Well, because each of these players are going to have very different ideas of what changes or updates would make a game better or worse. And that, in its essence, is what individualized product potential is. The very specific perception of an individual player as to what potential their game has. But why does this get worse over time? Well, let me explain. Almost all MMOs exist in a permanent state of development, with the content treadmill moving ever forward to try and keep people engaged and playing the game. This means that over time, as a player's personal investment grows, there will also be an ever-increasing addition or changing of content that increases alongside this, which whilst some of it is going to align with an individual's player's perspective on the direction that the game should go, it is inevitable that there is going to be changes that neglect or directly oppose what that individual thinks makes the game good. This inevitable separation of the reality of what a game is from a developer's standpoint and the individual perspective of what a game should be is, I believe, the primary reason why it's so common to see older MMOs with veteran player bases that are bitter but have completely contradictory explanations of where a game went wrong and what they need to fix. They also foster a nostalgia for an intangible golden age of when the game was actually good. A player that values PvE content is not going to be impressed when a massive PvP update comes out, and PvP players aren't usually going to be thrilled when new home decoration or vanity items get released. And whilst you can argue that there are going to be some players that value all aspects of an MMO, I would say these players are a minority and will always have a bias towards one or two particular aspects of a game anyway. Okay, so say you're with me so far and actually may even agree with me. You might be wondering, what can MMOs actually do to fight against this phenomenon from a developer standpoint? And I'm probably going to say one of the most defeatist things you may ever hear. And that is that there's nothing to be done. Trying to take on this problem is to fight against very human nature itself. However, that said, even if you can't directly combat this phenomenon, there is still different ways with which developers can interact with it. A primary example is the concept of an old school product, taking those nostalgic players back in time where inevitably they can re-experience the golden era of what they thought made the game amazing, something which MMOs like RuneScape or World of Warcraft have both done. Alternatively, developers can be very careful with how they process feedback and try to develop a game listening to the majority of feedback to try and maximize the most players' experiences. Examples of this would be small games that are highly engaged with their communities on forums or discords, or even have player polling options like old school RuneScape. Developers could also just do nothing or be extremely risk averse with updates, simply becoming paralyzed with the prospect that any change may be received negatively and actively drive people away, which is something that I think can be embodied by any game purchased by notorious Gamergo, kept on life support and monetized without any real forward momentum. Finally, I think the last primary way I think for developers to interact with this phenomenon is to simply ignore it. Stay true to their vision and their personal individualized product potential and create the game that they want to, at the risk of upsetting some of their player base. This might be a higher risk, but I personally think from a creative and artistic standpoint, this is the most exciting and also has the potential to have the largest payoff in the long term. The trigger for me reflecting on all of this has been the recent lengthy and robust discussion on the Wurm Online forums with experienced players, including myself, having long and detailed explanations of what they think would improve the game, all of which vary wildly in content for the most part. With the new era of game development potentially laying ahead of it and the new CEO of Game Chess Group talking a big game when it comes to appealing to new players, it makes me wonder, how can they contend with this phenomenon in MMOs? So what do you think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Is this already a documented phenomenon, just by an entirely different name? Let me know in the comments section below, or you can check out a link to my Twitch channel below and click through on that because I'm live right now, so you can come and chat to me. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take it easy. Cheers.